Marquer readied himself in the sand as the crowd began to chant, "Fight! Fight! Fight! Fight!" This makeshift arena, hastily scrambled together, might very well be his grave. As the king's guard came in, they equipped him with a weapon to defend himself against his opponent. As his nerves steadied and his mind came into sharp focus, he told himself, "All I need to do is kill him, and then I will have gone away with it." Images flashed in his mind of a forest and of the battered body of Aubrey and of his hands digging up a shallow grave to hide his horrific deed. And then quickly, the image of the one witness to his crime came sharply into his mind. This trial by combat would be his only way to be free of all suspicion. All he needed to do was kill his witness here, and he would walk away a free man. His thoughts changed as the crowd roared, but all of that noise began to fade as he heard his opponent's growl from across the arena. A primal fear erupted into Marquer, and his hair began to stand up on its own as he heard his witness growl. Thoughts of escape came quickly as he searched for an exit. But alas, the only way out was by finishing the job he had started in that forest. Marquer had only a split second to respond once the battle commenced as his opponent rushed at him, trying to grab at his neck. He dashed to the side, barely avoiding a fatal blow. But his opponent, with inhuman speed, rebounded back and caught Marquer's neck with his teeth. As the teeth sank in, Marquer could feel the searing pain it was causing him, and began screaming out as he could feel his own blood begin to drip down into his opponent's maw, until at last he screamed, "I'll confess! I'll confess! Just get this damn dog off of me!" After Marquer screamed that, his opponent released his grip and went back to his new master and received the best belly rub of his life. Oh yes, he did. What a good boy he was. Join us today on Historical Quarrels as I give you the full context to the murder of Aubrey de Montdidier and his loyal greyhound, who would avenge his master's murder, and what has to be one of the craziest, potentially true crime stories I have ever learned about. So pop a squat with your furry friends as we learn about this dog's historical quarrel. Welcome back to Historical Quarrels, the only podcast that will make you come in 30 seconds or less, guaranteed. On that note, this show is very NSFW, and its host, me, has no filter or shame. I was born without that thing in your brain that tells you that, you maybe shouldn't say something out loud, which has made certain aspects of my life harder than it probably needed to be. Great way to live. I really think everyone should try it every once in a while. With that out of the way, I first want to thank everyone that has been sharing the show and leaving reviews. Your support means the world to me and has really helped to grow the show as well. Please keep it up, guys. Thank you so much. Especially if you guys do find value in this, leave a review, leave a like, share it with someone. And yeah, let's just keep this train rolling, guys, so we can keep having some fun learning about some crazy historical shit. Secondly, if you haven't had the chance yet, please go check out Hard Homies Podcast, my second show that has always been called Hard Homies, and 100% never was called Stereotypical. Y'all are just Mandela affecting yourselves, and you're crazy if you think otherwise. On that note, I do need some help keeping my gas oven lit, so if anyone has advice on that, please DM me and let me know the best methods for it. Thank you in advance. For today's episode, we have our first true crime-esque quarrel. I'm kind of excited for this because true crime podcasts were the first type of podcasts I was introduced to, thanks to my wife. And I'll be honest, I hated most of them, but their format is very interesting to me, and as they all pretty much follow the same pattern. So expect that pattern today with some twists on it as we go over the life of the murderer and the life of the goodest boy ever. He's such a good boy. He's such a good little boy. Yeah. I just love the way people talk to their dogs because it's like adorable, and that's how I like to talk to my dogs when I had them. So, because they're just such good boys. Use Dior. And then at the end of the story, I will go over some of the true historical details regarding the events, as this is primarily a folk legend that was based off of some possible true events that occurred in the 14th century. Now, I'll kind of get into that a little more. I don't really want to spoil it for you. So let's just prepare yourselves for probably a big twist where, most of what I tell you isn't going to be accounted for, but it's going to be fun. And this is something new that I'm trying out, and I want you guys to enjoy it. So with that all of the way, let's dive into today's first true crime historical quarrel. You are listening to Historical Quarrels. So for today's episode, we're going to start off with the cultural landscape of France in the 1400s. So in the 1400s, France was undergoing profound transformation. The 100 Years' War with England, that lasted from 1337 to 1453, dominated much of that century. Joan of Arc, a peasant girl, emerged as the national heroine during this period, leading the French army to several key victories, which is really cool. I'll go over her life eventually. Culturally, the Gothic architectural style, with its stunning cathedrals like Notre Dame and Paris, was giving way to the Renaissance. The French court was a hub of lavish feasts, tournaments, and intricate dances. Now let's kind of get into the crime rates here. So medieval Europe is a broad term that spans roughly from the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the late 5th century to the beginning of the Renaissance in the late 14th century. The nature of crime, law enforcement, and justice varied greatly over this period between regions, making it challenging to provide exact crime rates. However, we can provide some general insights into the nature of crime and lawlessness during this period. Number 1, homicide. Some estimates suggest that urban areas in medieval Europe had homicide rates as high as 20 to 70 per 100,000 inhabitants annually. This is higher than most modern Western nations, but lower than the rates in some contemporary countries or cities. And then we have theft for our second one. Theft was common, especially in larger cities and during times of famine or economic hardship, and it's really hard to pinpoint exactly how much theft went on. But, think about it. Think about how fucking easy it was to steal shit back in the day. I bet you it was happening all the time, right? And this is because of reason number 3. We have banditry and outlaws. In more rural areas, banditry could be a significant concern, especially in regions without a strong central authority. Just means that people, when left unchecked, will typically fall to depravity, sadly. We can never have an idealized world, as nature in some people will always be evil or more than just evil, just really selfish. People are more concerned with themselves than they are with the other. There are people who only think of how things benefit them and not other people as well. They don't think about their neighbors. Doesn't matter what background they had, there will always be people like that, whether you're raised poor or raised rich. Now, let's get into the lawlessness and nobility, because nobility definitely had a different life than peasantry did. And our story today revolves around Marquer, who was a noble in the king's court. So, for nobility and justice, for much of the medieval period, justice was often in the hands of local lords and nobility. They held court, quote unquote, and could decide cases, levy fines, and hand out punishments. So, same thing we have today. We just give rich people fancy titles and typically require them to get a degree, at the very least, if they are a judge. But you can be a mayor and literally be as dumb as bricks. Same with senator, same with president. Yay! Go America. Love it. Number 2, we have ordeals and trials. The judicial process could be arbitrary. Ordeals such as trial by fire or water were often used to determine innocence or guilt, especially in the earlier part of the medieval era. These ordeals were horrific in nature, as well as an ordeal. An ordeal by fire would typically be a defendant standing on some hot coals to prove their innocence, because that is an amazingly good method to get people to confess their crimes. And I definitely wouldn't confess after 10 minutes of excruciating pain if I were innocent, just to make it stop. I totally wouldn't. I'd stand it if I was innocent. God, fuck that. That'd be awful. Okay, and then number 3, we have corruption. It was not uncommon for the nobility or those with wealth, to manipulate the judicial system to their advantage. Bribes, threats, and leveraging of influence could all play a role in how justice was meted out. Again, same shit we do today. It's just less complicated and more blatant back then. But I mean, it's only fair, though, because, if I made $100 million a year and owned 3 companies, my kids or me should be allowed to drink and drive all we want. Who cares? If some of the peasants die as a result of what we're doing. What were they going to contribute to society anyways? They weren't contributing $100 million a year. It was all me. Yeah. So if you guys can't tell, I have some strong opinions on how justice is meted out in America. So I'm not going to do a whole spiel like I did in some previous episodes, but I have some issues with it. Which leads me to the vulnerable populations. So those who were not of the nobility, especially serfs, peasants, and other vulnerable populations, had very limited rights and could be subject to the whims of their overlords. They were more vulnerable to exploitation and had limited recourse if they were wronged. Honestly, we have improved in this department, but not much. Not by much. My God, it's awful. Then we have vigilante justice. Like Batman and shit, but like French Batman, which is really cool. Now, due to the sometimes arbitrary and localized nature of justice, communities might sometimes take matters into their own hands, dispensing vigilante justice when they felt the official channels failed. And then we have sanctuary, which is very important back in the day for a lot of places. So churches sometimes offered sanctuary to those fleeing justice. Once inside a church, a person could not be forcibly removed without the church's permission. Kind of like how when you were a kid playing tag and you made the tree the safe zone. But then Bobby Dillard still tagged you, even though you were on base and he always pulled that shit. So you tried telling your parents Bobby wasn't playing fair and they laughed at you. So eventually, you and some of your other friends got fed up with it and decided to take justice into your own hands. And when you play next, you and all of your friends wait till he is in the safe zone. And then each of you circle around him and keep tagging him, saying he's it. He's it. He's it. He's it. And then he starts to complain, saying he's in the safe zone. And to stop. Please stop. But then each of you keep tagging him. And he eventually starts to cry and ask, why is everyone doing this? And as he cries, you and your friends just stare dejectedly at him, barely even moving. And eventually, all that can be heard by the group is Bobby's muffled cries saying he's sorry and he won't cheat again. But that isn't enough. He's been pulling this shit in the playground since kindergarten. Y'all are in the 3rd grade by now. He should have figured this shit out by the 1st grade. Bobby has to pay. So it turns into a semi-Lord of the Flies moment when one of your friends brings Holly Holbrook over, who Bobby had a crush on, to have her witness Bobby crying. And then Holly points and laughs at Bobby for being a little crybaby bitch. Then the recess bell rings, and Bobby runs off to the office. And you never see or hear about Bobby again until 20 years later. You are visiting your hometown. You see a bum on the streets who recognizes you and says his name is Bobby and that you ruined his life. And he tries to mug you, but there are cops there and they see the struggle. And when Bobby pulls out a knife, they shoot him. And then you hold sweet Bobby in your arms as you finally remember the awful thing you did to him. And you whisper, Bobby, I'm sorry, but you shouldn't have tagged me when I was in the safe zone. And Bobby, struggling to breathe, with blood gushing out of his mouth, says, I know. I'm sorry. And then his hand goes limp as you stare into his now cold, lifeless eyes. Eyes that remind you of the stares your friends and you gave Bobby as he was crying. And your final thought in this moment is, my monster. And yeah, sanctuary was pretty much like that in the 14th century. So now, let's kind of get into crime solving. Forensic science and formal detective work were still centuries away. Typically, crimes were solved through a combination of local gossip, testimonies, and sometimes the use of the quote-unquote ordeals that I had mentioned earlier. The tests that were used to determine guilt or innocence, often based on superstition, again through water or fire. The printing press hadn't yet reached France. That would later be in the 15th century, so information was primarily passed orally or through handwritten manuscripts. The bubonic plague had receded, but its impacts lingered, leading to labor shortages and socioeconomic changes. Feudalism was on the decline, with centralized monarchies rising in power. So now that we have a firm grasp on how crime and the methods for solving crime are done in this era, let's dive into the life of our killer today, Marquer. In the quaint town of Montargis, under the shadow of the ancient cathedral, young Marquer emerged into the world. But even from the beginning, the townsfolk whispered about the child with raven black hair and eyes that held secrets. Legend has it that young Marquer had an unusual penchant for collecting stray dogs. But not for the reasons you'd think. Being born into the upper class in aristocratic society, Marquer's life would fortunately be recorded by scribes and by his tutors who would mention things about him in their notes. Madame Dubois once reported seeing him at a market conversing in earnest with a poodle, discussing the merits of fine cheese. Which, as a kid, honestly, that's not that crazy to have been doing. I could see my own kids doing like something like that, where they're just kind of playing pretend, talking with the animals, being like, "Hey, dog, you like this cheese?" And then the dog just looks all confused, thinking that it's going to get food, but then my kid never gives it food, so the dog kind of slowly grows resentful towards my kid. Some shit like that. I don't know. But what was wild was what another one of his tutors reported to have seen him doing. The quote goes, "While out on a daily stroll, I spotted the young Master Marquer fiddling with something in the dirt. As I neared him, I was able to see clearly that the young master had managed to capture a bird, what seemed to be a colorful one. And as I neared even closer to him, I could hear the bird screeching, and I could see the young master was slowly pulling out its feathers, while being careful to keep it alive. His grip, so gentle and yet so ruthless on the bird, it seemed he had practiced this before. I, feeling awfully sorry for the poor bird, alerted the young master to my presence by coughing loudly and asking him what he was doing to that poor creature. To which he responded, teaching it a lesson. It deserved to be punished for leaving its droppings near me. I then asked him, why not just kill it and feed it to an animal? And then the young master's reply shook me to my core. He said, it's too easy just to let it die. It must suffer before it does. And after that, he let the poor thing go. And then, as it struggled to move, due to most of its feathers being plucked, the young Master Marquer stomped on it, putting the poor thing out of its misery. I'm not sure how to bring this abhorrent thing to the Lord and Lady Marquer, but something must be done. So you can see, this guy was twisted from a young age. Like, god damn, dude. And it's also said that well into his teen years, Marquer had the unfortunate habit of wetting the bed. The village laundress, Madame Leclerc, would often lament about the incessant linen cleaning, exclaiming in exasperation, "Oh la la, the sheet of Marquer again!" At an age also where most boys were sneaking glances at fruit vendors' melons for a completely different reason, Marquer was seen loitering near the town's infamous brothel, taking notes. Some say he was merely studying human nature, while others whispered he seemed fixated on the act, almost as if it seemed unnatural to him. Kind of fits in with like the whole killer, non-remorseful vibe. Most of them have like a weird understanding or feeling towards sex, and brothels back then were pretty brutal in nature too, so you probably saw a bunch of people like beating each other, and definitely got the wrong idea for how that was supposed to go. And then there were other mysterious fires that would happen around him, seemingly. So every time a barn would catch flames, mysteriously, young Marquer would be there, toasting marshmallows and singing old bardic tunes, seemingly unperturbed by the chaos. Almost as if he, was the one who did it. More than likely was. Kid definitely had all the tendencies of a serial killer, so. And despite all of his oddities, Marquer had an unnerving ability to know things he shouldn't. Like the time he recounted the secret recipe of Madame Gautier's famous pâté. The boy was a snoop and loves to sneak around. He was also said to have been caught in the kitchen, releasing his seed into desserts the chefs would make. He was the OG pie fucker. Probably saw those pies and was like, I need me some of that sweet just goodness. And if it makes my mouth hole feel good, maybe I'll make it feel good if I put my pee hole in it. And bam, he discovered a primitive fleshlight. So, good on him for being intuitive there. But amongst all the whispers and rumors, no one could have predicted the path Marquer would eventually tread. Was he a misunderstood genius, a tortured soul, or just a boy who loved to defy convention? In Montargis, legends and facts often blur, but our tale is really just beginning. It was in his teenage years, his parents, the Lord and Lady Marquer, began to force him to study and keep a journal of his progress. Marquer would keep 2 journals. One where he would wrote notes and general observations that would, seemingly be normal to most of those who'd pick up on it. And a second secret one that wouldn't be found until after his death, where he would write about things he knew he couldn't let anyone else see. This motherfucker knew something was wrong with him. The first journal entry that we have, recorded by him in the secret second journal, is dated August 12th. 1333. Today, Father Jerome caught me reading my special Bible during the sermon. Little does he know the passages I mark are the only truths that come from this wretched book. Those of the dealing with the Dark One, who speaks to me and gives me purpose. Only these passages catch my attention. And understand the true reality of this world, this so-called God, who would have us be slaves while Lucifer offers freedom and power. Why reject power and live in servitude? That's true blasphemy. Which, kind of has a point. Kind of weird that God doesn't want you to have, true power and just wants you to be a servant in your whole life. So I kind of get his point, but at the same time, worshiping Satan like that, I don't know. Because, the way he... We'll get into it. So... Some of the verses Marquer would marker Genesis 3:1, where Satan basically tells Eve how fucked it is that God lets them eat from every other tree, but besides the really cool one that will make you smart. And so Eve is like, yeah, that is kind of fucked, and eats it. And then God's like, the fuck, bro? I told you not to eat that shit, and cast both Adam and Eve out for getting smart and shit. I'll be honest, to a degree, Marquer has a point with the whole Bible shit, but other passages he marks I do not agree with, as he seemed to really just get into the Cain and Abel story. So, gonna dive into that. The next passage that kind of tells us more about that is marked September 3rd. Same year. Yet again, the story of Cain and Abel consumes my thoughts. Why couldn't mother and father bless me with a brother? Perhaps someone to argue with, or more. I must understand Cain more. He must be the answer I seek. Turns out the answer was just wanting to kill people, but using justifications for it so his subconscious could grapple with his actions, probably. Might not have been a full sociopath. More or less just someone who's obsessed with death and murder. So, one of those freaks. And then of the same year, we have another journal entry marked October 18th, where he says, another day, another lamentation. If only mother and father had granted me a sibling. Their denial is the root of my melancholy. How am I to achieve greatness without a brotherly rival? How can I be free of this thought that torments me without a brother? And he seems to have scribbled that all rather large in the journal. So, a little creepy there. I like to imagine due to this fixation, he would actively try to get his parents to fuck more. And eventually they had to sit him down and be like, son, it's really weird. You keep trying to get your mother and I to fuck. Also, we're royalty, so, we kind of get to fuck whoever we want on the DL. So, knock it off, please. getting weird. You're weird. You know. At least that's what I did to my kid. I'd be like, you fucking weird for doing that. Maybe you need to go see a shrink. Take him to therapy. But back then, they didn't have that option. So, you know. And then of the same year, we have a entry marked November 21st. He says, "Today, I experienced the thrill of taking a life. I was only a peasant. As I snuffed the life out of them, I felt nothing. No rush, no joy, no anger, no love. Nothing. I need to be punished. I need to be cursed. It appears the only way I can have this is if I, like Cain, slayed my brother. If only mother would bear yet another son, then I could finally feel what I seek." Which, that's fucking crazy. Motherfucker felt nothing. It's some wild shit. But now we have a good introduction to Marquer. Let's go ahead and meet the two other notable characters in this story. We have Aubrey de Montdidier, who in stark contrast to the enigmatic Marquer, Aubrey was also an aristocrat and a passionate hunter, with an unwavering love for his greyhounds. His life intertwined with these majestic creatures sadly take a turn worthy of the grandest of tragedies. Aubrey named his favorite greyhound Fleur, which was the French word for flower. Despite her delicate name, Fleur had the heart of a lioness. One fateful day, as Aubrey hunted in the dense Montargis forest, rogue bear charged, and just as death seemed imminent, Fleur, loyal to the end, intervened, battling the beast and saving Aubrey. But alas, her heroics came at a great cost. Fleur, gravely injured, was taken home. The entire town mourned the impending loss of the brave dog. But even in her final moments, Fleur had one last miracle to bestow upon the world. To Aubrey's astonishment, she gave birth to a single pup. A symbol of hope and continuity amidst the despair. And drawing inspiration for the world of mythology, Aubrey named the pup Dragon. And as Dragon grew, he inherited his mother's fierceness and loyalty, often showing an uncanny understanding of Aubrey's emotions. In a very real way, Aubrey would grow to love this dog as if it were his own son. It's noted in record that Aubrey would have a spot at the table for Dragon to sit and eat with the guests when they were alone. And when they were alone, Dragon would eat with him at the table. This guy loved his pooch. He's basically a modern day dog lover. You know, he's like treats him like a human. He totally did. Dragon was treated like a prince, and the love he was shown was reflected back in Dragon's loyalty and love for Aubrey as well. Now, let's go ahead and go back to Marquer, because this is where their paths intertwine. The Marquer family and Montdidier family were both in the king's court, and Marquer had been steadily increasing his reputation, kind of sneaking in more and more with the king. With King Charles Valois, who ruled in the 13th century. And as he was doing that, he would write in his journal more murders. He kept killing peasants, and he tried to form relationships with them, it seems. Did some real freaky shit, honestly. And eventually, the Marquer family with the Montdidiers would both be intertwined. They would interact as the Montdidier family, or Aubrey, was a king's consort and would go off on routine diplomatic missions for them, and Marquer grew jealous and envious of Aubrey and decided that the best way to get revenge against Aubrey was to befriend him and to turn him into a pseudo brother figure for him. Now, during this time, Aubrey and Dragon would go out hunting, and Dragon, still kind of a pup, was learning the ropes of it. He was learning how to hunt with his master. He was doing pretty good. He was honestly he was a good, almost natural, like Fleur, his dog mother was, is what Aubrey would write. Now, eventually, Marquer would get into Aubrey's inner circle, and he was invited over for dinner. And every time that he would come over for dinner, Dragon, Aubrey's dog, kind of had an unease about Marquer. Definitely, Dragon kind of had an idea what Marquer was up to. He could. It's almost as if a dragon would sense Marquer's evil intentions. Marquer would eventually help out Aubrey enough on some task, and when Aubrey's family fell into a little bit of debt, Marquer offered them a bunch of money. And this debt that Aubrey felt to him ended up causing Aubrey to call Marquer brother. And as he did that, Marquer finally was like, I have what I need. I have someone who's calling me brother. And so he begins to recite to Aubrey Genesis 3:2 and talks about how Cain made a deal. Well, not necessarily made a deal, but it was a till sower, and how in comparison, between them and the king would view Marquer as the sower of till, and how he wasn't being respected enough, and how Aubrey kept being given all these attention and favor. And this really began to freak out Aubrey. But Marquer was cunning enough and seemed to have convinced him, like, hey, you know what, it's fine. Yeah, I just wanted to show you like how much you're loved by the king, essentially, is what it says here in the verses. But they eventually go out into the forest hunting together. And Dragon, the dog, gets sent to go chase out they were chasing a fox to hunt. And as he's chasing the fox and going for the kill, Dragon eventually hears his master's screams. And Dragon, turns around, starts coming back, thinking he's got to go protect his master. He's got to go help him. And when Dragon gets there, he witnesses Marquer smashing Aubrey over the head with a rock. And obviously this pisses off Dragon. And Marquer, thinking of it, nothing of it, probably just shoos him away, kicks him out, and then begins to dig a hole and buries Aubrey in a shallow grave. Dragon, knowing what's happening, runs back to Aubrey's manor where one of Aubrey's friends is, and tries to get him to come with him. And as the friend sees the dog, he's like, well, okay, well, what's happening? And the dog is trying to nudge him back over to the forest to get him to follow. And eventually the friend gets it and does follow him. Then they get to the forest, and the dog digs up Aubrey's corpse. And the friend describes this later in a journal, where Dragon seems to have been almost like trying to wake up Aubrey, like pushing him, nuzzling him. Like, it's like that scene from The Lion King where Simba's like, wake up, Dad. It seems the Dragon basically did something similar here, and then laid down with him for a while. And eventually the friend picked up Aubrey's corpse and brought him home. They had a proper burial and a funeral there. And at the funeral, Marquer actually showed up. And this is where Dragon and Marquer's interactions would begin to coincide a lot more. And Dragon would actually attack Marquer. And the people were freaking out, being like, oh, is the dog just like mad, about like what happened? Because like nobody else knew that Marquer was there with Aubrey when they were hunting in the forest. Aubrey usually goes out alone just with his dogs. And so Marquer being there would be strange for them to think about. And they just getting him off of him. They're getting him off of him. And eventually sorry, I just like to imagine that there's some like old timey French detectives, and the detectives came up to the dog and were like, listen, we know you were there. Okay. Like, we know that you're the only one that could have been there. We found your paw prints at the scene. And the dog got interrogated. And what's funny about this is the story is actually kind of true, because the townsfolk first thought that the dog could have been the only one that killed Aubrey due to those two being the only ones out in the forest and thinking the dog had gone rabid. But the friend spoke up for the dog, saying the dog hasn't attacked anyone else. But it was rabid. There's no way it would have done. And then when it attacked Marquer, they're starting to think it was more rabid. But then the friend comes out and says, no, listen, we're pretty sure this is an accusation. And since they're in the king's court, the king actually agrees and says, I think the dog is accusing Marquer of the murder of Aubrey. And so this is where Marquer begins to freak out a little bit and is like, no, I got away with this. I need to get away with this. And in early January of 1334, this is where we have the courtroom, or the, I guess, arena fight that I described here at the beginning of the story. And this is where Marquer does eventually confess, and the dog is redeemed in the eyes of the people. And that brings us to the end of our tale, right? So this is, Marquer gets executed afterwards. He's hung, and they go on to find the journal. He was killing other people. It all makes sense. Woohoo, victory. Now, what's crazy about this is the actual true origins of the story. Sorry, I wanted to write more of this out. I did not have the time this week to write this all out. So you're getting like kind of a shortened version of this as we get into the true historical details now. So let's dive deep into the true historical facts of the Dog of Montargis. So, in the early 14th century, the legend of the Dog of Montargis is believed to have its origins during the reign of Charles V of France. Charles V, also known as Charles the Wise, was a notable monarch of the Valois dynasty, reigning during the turbulent period in French history marked by the 100 Years' War against England. The legend, which speaks of the dog's undying loyalty to its murdered master and its pursuit of justice, seems to echo the themes of treachery, loyalty, and retribution that were prevalent during this period. While the legend began circulating orally, as many tales did in that era, it is difficult to pinpoint exact primary sources that documented the event in real time. The oral tradition played a significant role in the dissemination of stories during the 14th century, given that literacy rates were not high and written records were often the preserve of clergy or royalty. Thus, the Dog of Montargis legend may have been spread among the populace as a folktale or anecdote originally. Its details embellished or modified with each retelling, essentially. The dog, chasing down Marquer and like constantly attacking him until the people realize he's trying to tell us something might be a little far-fetched. But you never know. Over time, as the story was passed down through generations, it became a fixture in French lore. Although its my God, I can speak English. Historicity remained. My God. Its historicity remained debated. The lack of contemporary written evidence from the 14th century further shrouds the tale in mystery, making it a blend of possible fact and likely fiction. And then by the 16th and 17th centuries, the Dog of Montargis tale had transcended its oral origins, finding its way into various French literary works. As the Renaissance ushered in an era of increasing literacy and a renewed interest in recording history and popular stories, chronicles, annals, and other written records began to include mentions of the loyal dog and its quest for justice. The transition from oral folklore to written documentation attests to the story's enduring popularity and its cultural significance. Writers of the time, intrigued by tales that captured the essence of loyalty, treachery, and vengeance, themes deeply embedded in the human experience, again, kind of like Hamlet or The Lion King, found the Dog of Montargis' story to be fertile ground for exploration. While some writers might have presented the story as historical fact, which is very much the case and why a lot of people argue that it is a historical documented fact, others likely incorporated it into their work as an allegory or metaphor. The presence of the tale in these texts only served to further embed it within the cultural consciousness of the French populace. Furthermore, these literary inclusions provide modern historians and enthusiasts with tangible proof of the story's long-standing resonance, even if definitive historical evidence of the actual events remains elusive. Which, it's like, okay, cool. It may remain a little elusive, but there's actually a note. The only real proof we have of this is there's a note sent by a Christian monk to one of the king's courts, talking about the dog as if it were a true historical fact, and like something that was. And the guy was only born maybe 20 years after the supposed event would have happened. So more than likely, it seems to something to that degree definitely did happen. As the guy referred to it as, hey, like this animal definitely could be trying to tell us something. Because, the animal was right in this other case. So in the 18th century, witnessed the increasing influence of theater as a powerful medium for storytelling and a key instrument of cultural exchange. The legend of the Dog of Montargis was not immune to this trend and soon found itself adapted for the stage, transcending its oral and literary roots to captivate audiences in the theatrical realm. That's right. This is a motherfucking play. And so in 1814, the English adaptation titled The Dog of Montargis, or The Forest of Bondy, penned by William Diamond, graced the stage of the Royal Coburg Theatre in London. This play was not just a mere retelling, but a dramatic, evocative rendition that breathed new life into the age-old legend. Diamond's work was significant as it introduced the tale to an entirely new English-speaking audience, allowing them to connect with the narrative's core themes of loyalty, revenge, and justice. Throughout the 18th century, various adaptations of the legend emerged, both in France and in English-speaking regions. These dramatic works not only attested to the story's enduring appeal, but also played a pivotal role in amplifying its reach. Each theatrical performance, whether in the grandeur of Parisian theaters or the more intimate venues of London, layered new interpretations and nuances onto the legend, ensuring its continued relevance. As curtains rose and fell, the tale of the faithful dog seeking vengeance for its master echoed in the hearts of countless theatergoers, solidifying its place in cultural history. The 19th century, often termed the long 19th century due to its pivotal role in shaping modern Europe, witnessed an explosion of cultural, literary, and artistic endeavors. During this period, the tale of the Dog of Montargis resonated more than ever, benefiting immensely from the burgeoning literary and theatrical scenes. In France, the legend persisted with vigor, a plethora of French playwrights and authors riding on the wave of Romanticism and its emphasis on emotion, heroism, and nature. They loved that shit back in the day. They found the tale a perfect fit for the sensibilities of the age. Its elements of unwavering loyalty, dramatic vengeance, and heart-rending tragedy echoed in the romantic ideals of the time. They were like, this is very romantic. The Aubrey, he loves his dog, but then he is ripped away from the dog at an untimely point of his life, and it is so sad. Oh my god. We must write this down. We must have everyone hear this. It really, and then like, you know how like French poetry just becomes like super like lovey-dovey, but like dark and like emo. Kind of similar with the Dog of Montargis here, where they love their bittersweet love, essentially. And so as they weaved the story into plays, novels, and poems, they ensured that the legend remained not just a part of historical lore, but a living, breathing narrative embedded in France's cultural fabric. Across the English Channel, the story's appeal was no less potent. In England, where theater thrived during the 19th century, the story of the avenging canine took on a life of its own. Adaptations, notably including those inspired by Diamond's rendition, were frequently staged in both metropolitan and provincial theaters. The narrative, with its evocative themes and dramatic climax, captivated English audiences just as effectively as their French counterparts. Definitely not as good as Hamlet, you know, what Shakespeare did, but still pretty damn good, especially with the dog, and for people who love dogs. And as the century progressed, the Dog of Montargis has transcended borders and language barriers, morphing into a universal tale of loyalty and justice, and cementing its legacy in the annals of European folklore. Goddamn words. I can speak words, goddamn it. English is not that hard. Okay. So now we're in the 20th century. This is where a lot of things were marked by significant advancements in technology and a rapidly evolving cultural landscape. This brought the legend of the Dog of Montargis into new, unprecedented mediums. With the rise of the film industry, stories that had primarily been shared through oral tradition, literature, and stage found a home on the silver screen. The captivating tale of loyalty and revenge proved to be a narrative well suited for cinematic treatment. That's right. This is a fucking movie. I bet you motherfuckers didn't know that because a lot of you here are from America. And those of you in France are like, well, of course. I know the Dog of Montargis. We've all watched that movie. But here in America, I never heard about it. And I bet you most of my listeners have never heard about it. So, it's great. So various filmmakers, both within France and internationally, saw the potential in the story, adapting it to resonate with contemporary audiences and while preserving its core ethos. Television, another powerful medium that emerged in the 20th century, also embraced the legend. The serialized nature of TV storytelling allowed for a more in-depth exploration of the tale's nuances, characters, and themes. Its episodic format, yeah, that's right, there's a TV show. Yeah, and the TV show is just called The Dog of Montargis, if you're all curious. You can look it up. There's even like a YouTube... there's a YouTube video of one of the episodes. And it's actually really important for history because this is where dogs started getting used in storytelling. So they'd bring like actual dogs on stage and train them to act, which is really fucking cool. So, it's crazy to me that this story is essentially what caused, Air Bud to start. So if you hate Air Bud, you have this tale to blame. If you love Air Bud, you have this tale to thank. So in the 20th century, among literary reinterpretations, a notable mention is Maurice Durand's historical novel, The Cursed Kings, known for its meticulous research and rich portrayal of medieval France. The series integrates the Dog of Montargis legend within its tapestry of historical events, characters, and intrigues. Durand's work, praised for its narrative prowess, played a pivotal role in reintroducing the legend to a new generation of readers, further solidifying the Dog of Montargis' enduring presence in the canon of French literature and folklore. As the century progressed, the tale's adaptability and timeless appeal ensured that it remained a cherished narrative, continually finding relevance and resonance amidst changing times. So, now here we are in the 21st century. So we're to our time, folks. As global tourism expanded and historical sites increasingly became points of interest for travelers from all over the world, the Château de Montargis emerged as a notable destination for those intrigued by the legend of the Dog of Montargis. Nestled in the picturesque Laureate department of France, this ancient chateau boasts a rich tapestry of history and stories. Among its many attractions is a room that is said to be the very site where the iconic trial by combat between the loyal dog and its master's alleged murderer took place. Which is fucking crazy. So the chateau, leveraging this legend, has meticulously curated exhibits and informational plaques, providing visitors with an immersive experience that transports them back to the era when the story supposedly unfolded. The room itself, preserved with care, is a testament to the chateau's commitment to honoring its storied past. Tour guides often regale visitors with the tale, painting vivid pictures of the dog's loyalty and the climactic trial by combat. Furthermore, the tale's enduring popularity has given rise to annual events, reenactments, and themed tours centered around the legend, drawing enthusiasts, historians, and curious travelers alike. The integration of the Dog of Montargis' story into the Château de Montargis' offerings has not only enriched the visitor experience, but has also cemented the castle's place as a key landmark for those keen on exploring France's cultural and historical heritage. As a result, the chateau and its legendary room have become synonymous with the tale, offering a tangible connection to a narrative that has captivated imaginations for centuries. So, the enduring allure of this story with its dramatic narrative has naturally prompted historical inquiries into its veracity. As with many legends that have been passed down through the centuries, the tale's origins are shrouded in the midst of time, complicating efforts to definitively confirm or debunk its authenticity. While the tale has been recounted in various literary works and dramatizations, concrete historical documentation proving the story's events is scant. Over the years, the absence of irrefutable contemporary accounts or records has led some historians to categorize the legend as folklore or embellished historical fiction. Some argue that the story, while potentially rooted in the kernel of truth, was likely enhanced with dramatic elements to captivate audiences, as was common in oral storytelling traditions. Essentially saying, the dog might have just attacked the dude, and since the dog's owner was the one who was killed, they all just were like, oh, okay, that dog probably just, thinks that this guy was the killer. And let's go ahead and hang him. And so the dog didn't have to fight him or anything. It was just like, okay. The dog accused him. Fuck it. We hate this guy. Let's kill him. That's maybe what they did. Maybe Marquer wasn't a secret serial killer who murdered peasants all the time. I just did that because I wanted to do like a true crime-esque thing. And yeah, I didn't have time to finish up the rest of that as we got to the story because, I wanted to have like a whole trial, courtroom situation, lawyers and stuff. But yeah, I did not have time this week. It's been a very busy week for me. So next time I do a true crime story, which I will do, I do promise that I'm going to be better about this. So anyways, let's continue. So, however, the legend's persistence suggests a foundation in some historical occurrence. Even if the exact details might have been distorted or amplified over time, it's possible that a dog's loyalty or peculiar trial by combat in the vicinity of Montargis did inspire the legend. Still, without corroborating historical evidence, it remains a tantalizing mystery. In academic circles, the debate continues. Is the Dog of Montargis a genuine historical account, an amalgamation of several incidents, or merely a captivating work of fiction? Regardless of its factual basis, the tale's cultural resonance and enduring impact are undeniable, proving that sometimes the line between history and myth can be as captivating as the stories themselves. So to conclude all of this, while the precise origins and authenticity of this story are hard to pinpoint, it is an enduring presence in literature, drama, and popular culture speaks to its captivating nature and universal themes of loyalty and justice. And we have it to thank for Air Bud, and I loved Air Bud as a kid. And that brings us to the end of today's historical quarrel. So I hope you guys enjoyed that first true crime-esque style of storytelling. I'm going to try and get a little better at it, obviously. Today was definitely a test run. A more of a, like, I had a couple different ways I wanted this to go. And for the last bit, I couldn't decide how I wanted to do it. Since, again, it is a folklore legend. Also, I want to give a big shout out to Mike Ritz, who, if you guys want to go check him out, he's a listener of the show. He runs a business called New Belief Studio. You can go to www.newbeliefstudio.com and go give his stuff a look. It's pretty cool. He does a lot of art, does a lot of different things. It's really cool. I liked it. I like talking to him. He's a cool guy. So go check out his stuff. We have him to thank for this series that I plan on doing, and I do plan on getting better at this. So again, this is my first time doing kind of true crime-esque. Don't judge it too harshly. Like I said, this week has been busy with work and with life events happening, so just not have had as much time as I normally do to prep for this show. And I know it'll kind of impact it here a little bit. I hope you guys still enjoyed it. I did put in quite a bit of work still. As much as I could, especially after I got back from vacation, I just had a ton of stuff I had to get done. So next week's episodes will be a lot better. I am going to be continuing kind of what I did with like Rome, where I'm going to be introducing Quarrels over a period of time. But it's actually going to be with America's politics and with its policies and how America has struggled against itself for the past since its inception, essentially, and how the Democratic and Republican parties have been at each other's throats, and how history can kind of show us the way that's worked and the way we're going to work out over time. It's going to be a lot of fun, especially if you kind of enjoy learning about how systems got set up and how it's evolved over time, and you get to look at like how the gears kind of work together. There's gonna be a lot of work put into it, a lot of love, because I do love this stuff. I have a lot of fun talking about it. Again, though, I do plan on kind of every now and then doing stories like this where it's a fable based off of like a potential historical truth, and then within that I'm going to have like a true crime story go off, and I'm going to turn the killer into like a serial killer, and we're going to explore the serial killer's mindset. So I get to do a little bit of like historical fiction writing myself and have fun with it. Much like how the Dog of Montargis was a work of historical fiction and how people changed it over time, I turned it into a true crime episode today. So let me know if you liked that. If you didn't and you just wanted to know like the true facts about it, potentially, or just like hear the story, I could have like recounted like the beats of the play, which I did a little bit. I mean, I told you the story just in a different way. So, I mean, you got the story. You can go read the play. The friend's name changes with each iteration that it's gone through for Dragon. But the dog was named Dragon in most of the plays that I read. Marquer was named the same with Aubrey. So those were the three constants. Those are the three most important characters of the story. Yeah, guys, I don't know. I've had a really good time doing this. I'm having a lot of fun. And I want to start interacting with you guys more. If you want to support this and you feel like this show is worth something to you, please go support us on Patreon. I plan on introducing some Patreon episodes here soon. And I don't know, I was going to do like a live chat session or something where you guys can just like hang out with me and we can, and like, I was probably going to record it. And then like, that was going to be for the other Patreon subscribers. So like, if you do like the $10 one, you get to be on that live call. And if you're $5 one, you get to listen to like the live call and like the chats that we have and the discussions that happen. I mean, if this show ends up getting like so big and I have like 10,000 people on the Patreon, that might get a little hard. So, you know, things might change over time, which is natural. And I hope you guys are okay with that. Changes happen. And I might have to do other things, but just it's going to be something that evolves, something that I work on. And again, I just hope you guys are enjoying it. I really do appreciate the growth that I've been seeing. I'm glad that you guys have gone over and I've started listening to Hard Homies podcast. Definitely never been called Stereotypical. Don't know what you're talking about. That bit will never stop, by the way. You guys are going to be lit up in gas for that. So, yeah, man, I don't know. It's been real interesting seeing the growth, and it's been really cool. And it just makes me feel good because it makes me feel like I'm putting work into something that I enjoy and I love doing, and I get to see other people love what I'm doing as well, and they get to enjoy it just as much as I do. I have there's not as many reviews, obviously. Again, if you found worth in this, please do go leave a review, share it with someone. That's the best way to help grow the channel. I'll be making stickers here soon. And if any of you want stickers to go share with other people, just let me know. Hit me up on either Discord or Instagram. If you go follow me on Instagram, it's just Historical Quarrels. You can look it up on Instagram. You can also search me by name. My name's Tyler Eckhart. You can find me on there and try and reach out to me. Same thing with Discord. My Discord, it's funny. My Discord's just straight up my name. And so you guys can search me up on there. Message me. Feel free to talk to me. I don't mind talking to people. I'm not that popular, you know. I'm just a guy. I'm a normal guy. I'm not some crazy person who's like, oh, you can't talk to me. I'm like too cool for you. I'm like, no, dude, I'll talk to everyone. Everyone has something interesting to say. And yeah, well, maybe some people don't, but like everyone has purpose. Never think that you don't have purpose. So I am looking for more suggestions for more stories, more quarrels. So again, big thank you to Mike Ritz for suggesting a future tale that I'll be doing. That'll be similar to this. I'm definitely putting a lot more work into because, again, I just didn't have time. I found this one interesting, and I've been wanting to do a true crime-esque episode for a while because I know it's popular, and honestly, I find it kind of funny to just kind of mock the format a little bit, just like with fake stories and be like, hey, so this totally happened, and this guy was like fucking disgusting. I don't know. Then, I almost wanted to like try and like really glorify the killer during the episode. I was like, no, maybe that's too far. But that's totally how some true crime podcasts come off. They like, Like, oh man, and he got away with it. He was so crafty. He was so clever. Like, so I was thinking about doing something like that. If you have suggestions, again, please email me at historicalquarrels@gmail.com or find me at any of our socials. And let me know like what works for those episodes that you'd like to see me incorporate or make fun of. Because yeah, I'm probably going to make fun of it, to be honest. I do view true crime sometimes as a little too glorifying towards the killer. And I have some issues there. I don't mind that people do it. It's okay. I get it. It's a popular thing. People like listening to it. But if I'm going to do something similar, I'm going to make fun of it. And that has to be accepted. If you don't like it, I guess you don't like it, and that's fine. You can listen to my other episodes that you probably prefer over that. I mean, my next ones are going to be kind of political, so that might cause me some issues. Controversy is good, though. So, start stirring up the pot. That's what I am with politics. Love doing that. But no, I'm going to try to give it an objective bias, or not bias, an objective view on both sides. I'm just going to try and state the truth, the facts, and then I'll give my opinion at the ends of the episodes. We did get a new review recently on the show. There's 5 stars again. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Glad that they just said that they loved the historical facts and how fun the show was. And so I'm glad that it's fun. I'm glad that I'm, again, doing something that you guys like listening to. And let me know how I can improve. Seriously, I'm not above criticism. I love criticism. It really does help. It impacts the show, helps me grow as a creator, as someone who loves to write. I know today's episode, the last bit of the story, definitely was impacted from my lack of time, being able to come up with a concrete ending for the story. And that was hard to do. It was meant to originally just last the 30 minutes, though. So this was be 30 minutes of that, 20 to 30-ish minutes of like historical fact. And yeah, the main joke or kind of like the fun was just like the 30 minutes of like the fun story, and then 30 minutes of the whole like here's the truth, and that's kind of boring, but like oh well, you guys have to deal with it. So let me know if that format works for you. If it doesn't work and you just want like me coming up with like essentially a new way to tell the tale and turning it into like a true crime thing, or hell, even something else, tell me. Like, let me know. Reach out to me, and yeah, I'll work on it. If I get enough people telling me they want me to do something a certain way, I'll definitely look at it and give it a go. If I don't like it, I'll tell you guys next time that I just fucking hated it. So it's not happening again. No, not really. If it doesn't work for me, then I can't make it entertaining. So that would be the real reason why. You guys have a good one, though. Thank you so much for listening. Last time I'll say this, please leave a review, share this with someone. If you think that this show gave you some value, and you want to, offer some value back, go check out our Patreon. It's just Historical Quarrels on Patreon. And yeah, have a good one. Bye-bye.